since I am bored with nothing to do, let's build a tower with these blocks. Now, the key for this tower is we must build it with structural integrity in mind the whole time. It's the most important thing. This tower will not be subject to any earthquakes, so flexibility isn't too important. And with any tower, of course, it needs to have a phenomenally strong base. With that in mind, I think these could be the best pieces for the base. Now the question is, what should the footprint of the tower be? I think this footprint building up will be too narrow. However, a square of this size might be more appropriate. The only problem with that, of course, is that I think it will be difficult to get this square piece in, because I don't think there's too many of them. So ideally we could do the tower out of rectangle only. So perhaps we could go for a base like this and then build. Let me think. I think the first level needs to have some sort of stabilisers built in, maybe like this, to give it extra structural stability. I don't think that is the best piece for the bottom because it doesn't allow me to build any stabilisers in. I think maybe this could be a good footprint to build from. It's got stability. Then we could fix like this and then like that, which sort of ties it all in, and it gives us these little support legs, which I like because I feel like they just sort of give it that extra stability. So I think I need to make sure that this is all really heavily pressed in, and that I think is a solid base to build from. And then so far up the tower, I could maybe leave out this rectangle section and just build this square even higher. But I think for the bottom that is great. That's a really great base. And yeah, the support pillars on the side I think are fantastic. So I'm just going to have a look for some more big pieces. These long ones are quite good, but I really need as many flat ones as I can possibly get. Oh, we've got a couple there. I can see a couple of flat ones, quite big flat ones. So I think I'm just going to dig down here to keep the noise to a minimum a bit, and then eventually I'll be able to grab this big piece. Look at that, fantastic. Now of course, a very logical move with anything building wise, these are the weak points where there's joints. So, pretty obvious here, but I'll say it anyway. Building like that is poor because you continue the joint in the same position, which keeps it weak. So you must stack everything. So join here, then the joint here, and it just gives it a lot more strength. Pretty straightforward stuff. So I think for now we'll keep the full rectangle as the base going up, but it will use up a lot more material, continuing the full cross section up. So at some point I will ditch this rectangle bit and just keep this square section going up, but I think while we're this low down, it makes sense to keep the full rectangle going at the moment. Again, I need some more big pieces first. Something else to consider. It's quite logical to build the base with all the big flat pieces, and then as you get further up, you start using the smaller stuff because it's all you've got left. Now, I think a smart way to proceed with this is to actually save some of the big, thin blanket pieces and to use them incrementally up the tower, because I feel like it just ties the whole tower together. So maybe I don't want to use too many of them. Start off with, let's see what the height is. So we're currently at 3 inches. 3 inches. We can get it a lot bigger than that, so let's find some more materials. Oh, I can see some more big pieces here. Some key pieces. Well, that's not relevant. There's another big blanket piece. My son's put some stickers on that. Whenever I've built towers with my son, he has an insatiable desire to kick it over, which sometimes stresses me out, because the tower, only if the tower hasn't reached its full potential, it can be quite distressing having it kicked over before it reaches its potential. Another thing I think I'm going to do with this is, obviously when we get to these pieces and we go around, it's going to be hollow in the middle, which is another reason I think saving some of these will be great, because incrementally we can put some of these in, which will just tie everything in, keep it structurally stable, very stable. And I think when my son comes home, it'll be a nice surprise for him to have a big tower that he can kick over, which I'm sure he'll be happy about. So actually, I think these are the most common occurring building material. So I think I must have these as the baseline material, and then divert every now and then, because I don't want to have a massive section of the tower towards the end that's just made out of these. I think it could be quite weak. So we'll go around here. Again, we'll just keep the full footprint for now. I think it just makes sense at the moment. I might drop this down a bit because we're still quite low. And I think we'll go for another round of these double blocks. Again, remember, we have to stagger Actually, I don't think this is the most common brick. I think this one is. I think this is the most common, which is even worse structurally. So I might have to do a course of these actually, to get some of them used. I suppose with these it doesn't matter if we actually use these with the double ones. So I think with this now being a solid base, I think we can now move on to just the square section. So what I'll do is, could finish that off a bit better. Maybe put some of these flag bricks in to sort of symbolise the end of that sort of section. This potentially looks quite pure. I don't know, we can tie that off actually. I kind of want a long one coming out and then holding these in. So they're quite secure. I think we'll put a flat one there. And then of course we need another one here. I'm starting to get some height now. I think we were 3 inches at the last measure. Wow, excellent, 8.5 inches, fantastic. So I think I need to dig round in the back a bit more to get some more things out. Some of these big rubbish pieces out of the way. I really need another square one for here. Well, actually, I suppose I can just use these to sort of fill that in. And then we can get the long one over to tie that flag in, which finishes that off nicely. And now we can sort of continue with just this square section, which will preserve materials, which is the key of what that's trying to achieve. We want to preserve these materials. We can't keep the full width of this going up all the way because we'll simply run out of building materials and we won't get high enough. So I think, okay, I'm happy with that. That's excellent. We've got our main base. We've got our little support legs to support the base. We've got some flags in for a decorative piece, which marks the end of this little section, which is not gonna go up any further. And now we can just focus on this square part all the way up. We do have a full other blanket piece here, which we could put on, but I'm going to save this for further up, maybe 15, 20 inches in height, just to tie everything in. And I think it might, obviously we're not going to be hollow anymore. Actually, I think they're a waste, because if we're not going to be hollow, we're not going to be solid, then we don't need them there at all. In fact, seeing as I have a lot of these, we could just do a round of these little ones. See how we stagger the joints? Always stagger the joints, very important. 101 of building is to stagger the joints. Excellent. Now let's go to a double height brick so we can build a bit of height onto this tower now. because they just they're so weak. In fact, I might build one of those in to sort of tie in this, because this course is so weak. All these single ones, it's so weak that it could be a weak spot of the entire tower, which, as you can imagine, is really not ideal. However, we have no choice to use them because there is a finite amount of resource, so they do need to be used. Now I want, so the point is, after this section, I think it's quite clear that that's weak. I mean, look here, you can even see where the joints, we've got long joints here, which is, I mean, look at that, it's weak already, but we can only mitigate the weakness so far, because, like I said, we have to use them. So I think putting a long one across the top like that would just help to sort of hold that in together and give it a bit of strength. Now, I really don't like that we're carrying that joint up for a third course, which I think is completely wrong, because we're just magnifying the weakness there. So I think with this one, I'll just leave that gap, because it shouldn't be too much of a problem. But if it is, I suppose I could put that to that help, maybe put that across there, I'm not sure. The only problem with leaving a gap is I can't now go back to these ones, because that will just be far too weak. So I might have to just fill that in and put that down, like so. So I think we were 8.5 inches before. Oh my goodness. Now we are at, well, 11.5 inches. So not too much progress there, but progress is progress. Move that up a little bit. Now I think I'm going to try and get more of these bricks out, so we can actually see what we're dealing with. And maybe I think from an aesthetic point of view, with having the base here, flags here, I think maybe some flags on this side would look nice now, maybe something like that. But I need another blue one, of course. Excellent. And then we can fill that in with a double. Oh, if I just get a bunch more of these out. I'll tell you what, I could use more of these, because again, while these are not ideal for building, it's still a material, and with materials being finite, you have to use everything. I don't know what they can be used for, they're really no good. But if I can do a course of flags, then that's great, because it gets us more height without using the main building blocks that we like. Another flag. And another flag. And maybe some come out this way as well. And that's turning out to be a nice course, actually. Quite nice indeed. we're saving these guys for the absolute top because these are proper flags. This is the final flag. That's a bit bent, which might not be too good for us. But I think it should be fine. So if we put 2 more flags in there, so as you can see, we've got quite a cool course of flags there, which has also given us more height, which is fantastic. So now I'm going to do a long thin one to knit all them in together. So we must look at the course below and we can see that the last long one ran this side with the joints being here. So we will not be putting it that way around. We are now going to stagger the long one and ensure that the long one is perpendicular to the last long one. So if we put them on like that, and then we can put these little rectangle ones to fill it up. And seeing as I have so many of these lying around, I think I need to get a bunch of them used. So we're going to again do another course of single bricks, which is going to give us some more height. Notice I still haven't used this because I don't know if this is the last one, and it's a really fantastic piece to tie everything in and give it that extra strength. So I'm being reluctant to use it really. But something else I am conscious of is that we don't have too many of these. Actually, there's quite a few of these. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So I do have 9 of these, and I only need 2, and 2, yeah, 2, and then some little ones. I only need 2 long ones, and I can fortify an entire after each course, so I think I can afford actually. Notice again how we've staggered, we've gone perpendicular to the last one to give it that extra durability. I really like that course, I think that looks really good. I probably should have put 2 flags coming out there as well. I think that would have looked better. In fact, I've got 2 flags here. I think for what it's worth, before we get too far ahead, if I can just sort of lift the top of this, take this red off, put it back, put 2 green flags on, take out the piece that we're replacing with the flags, put that back in its position, and slide that on. And now what we've done is we've got our flags in, so I think those 2 flags can look cool there. Just before we got too far ahead, I think we should do a height check. So if we slide this in, I think the last measure was 11 inches. I think now we are at about 15 and a half. So we've gone from 3 to 8 to 11, now to 15 inches high, which I believe, it's over, of course, 12 feet, 12 inches is a foot, so 18 inches is 1.5 feet, yeah, so we're closing in on 1.5 foot, which is great. More flags there. this is something else to consider, and it's a good time to mention it now I have this piece. At some point, it may be worth shrinking even further and going into the thin spire, which gets more height whilst preserving the remaining materials. However, it's not my favourite thing to do because that spire is just absolutely fraught with weaknesses. But I think there's it gets to a point where you don't really have a choice. Just like move this a bit. Okay, so I'm going to get some more pieces out of here so we can see what we are working with. Lots of these single ones. I think we're going to have to do another course of these singles because there's just so many of them. So if we get all these in. And now I think in fact, I think that's a really good time to end the video. It's coming up to half an hour. And I'll tell you what, we'll just tie this in and then we can end it. So, again, we went this side, then this side. So the next tying in section is this way around. And then obviously the little parts to go in that. Wow, so I think that's excellent really. We'll get a quick measure on this because I think we'll leave it. I think that is plenty really for part one. So we actually achieved the 1.5 foot mark. It's sitting at around 19.5 inches. Closing in on 2 foot. So yeah, great progress. If I just show you the I'll just show you the tower quite nicely there. We've still got quite a lot of these long pieces. We've got more materials over here and quite a few left in the box. However, the bag, was full, and now it is 25% remaining. So I think we've used about half of our building materials. Maybe. Yeah, about half, I'd say. So, will we have to narrow the same way we narrowed the base down? Will we have to narrow again because we're running out of building materials? And to be honest, I think this would be great. I think this would be fantastic